Welcome to Friendeavor, the podcast, the weekly podcast where we explore the highs and lows of friendship with your hosts, Danielle and Kayla.
As we journey through life, our friendships often evolve and change, ebb and flow, and sometimes even come to an end. Danielle and I are lifelong advocates for the power of friendship, and we are here to guide all of us through the many challenges and joys that come with building and maintaining strong, meaningful connections with those around us.
Join us each week as we deep dive into the intricacies of friendship, from navigating conflicts to fostering new relationships and everything in between. With insightful interviews, personal anecdotes, and expert advice, Friendeavor is the perfect podcast for anyone looking to strengthen their bonds with the people they love.
So, whether you are on the go, taking care of chores, or just settling in, get ready to explore the world of friendship on Friendeavor, the podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I am absolutely thrilled to be here with my sister-in-law, Kayla, launching the Friendeavor podcast. I can't believe this day is finally here.
Yay!
This was not even on my horizon, Kayla, when I first started Friendeavor, but it just seemed like the natural next step, and I'm absolutely thrilled that you have decided to take this journey with me.
I'm so excited, and I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. So I thought for our very first episode, since, this is a friendship channel for YouTube and a friendship platform, that we would talk about some of the common myths that you would experience, like, or that people think of, when they're thinking about friendship or what they expect friendship to be. So we'll just dive right in. When you hear the phrase myths, like friendship myths, what comes to mind for you?
Okay, when I hear about friendship myths, I think about that picture perfect, like walking into a sunset, the brunette and the blonde. They might have gotten a fight earlier in the story, but like everything's better and they never talk about it ever again.
That is always what comes to mind for me too, is the picture perfect. Like, you always have to have your counterbalance, your yin, your yang, your blonde, your brunette, whatever. And listener, just so you know, you probably are going to hear us say that phrase 1,000 times, because that is absolutely what I think of too. And to be honest, in my early years, like early teens, I thought if I didn't have that type of friendship, then I didn't have a friendship. I don't know if you've ever experienced like a thought that, or
absolutely.
a feeling.
Oh yeah.
This journey of Friendeavor started far, far before a name ever got stuck to it or whatever, right? Like, I've been on a journey of exploring friendship since, we all have since we were young, but to me, it's super interesting to see how it affects your life. So that's kind of how this all came to be. So if you're ready, let's just dive right in to myth number one. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. So myth number one is you need a lot of friends to be happy. That's one of the most common myths about friendship, is that the more you have, the happier you'll be. And that's not just friendship, that's life in general, right? If you've got 2, 3, 4 cars, you're going to be happier. If you've got a house and a vacation house, you're going to be happier, right? Friendship is not the exception. I use that term very loosely, but a myth is that the more friends you have, the happier you'll be. Research shows that it's not so much the quantity, right? It's the quality. So you don't need to have a ton. You need to have a few close friends that you can actually trust and confide in, which is much more beneficial than having a large group of acquaintances. In the Friendeavor friendship pyramid, relationships are broken down into 5 different categories. Just like a pyramid, you got your bigger ones at the bottom, your smaller ones on top. And the bottom tier is acquaintances. The next tier is friends, followed by good friends, and then best friends. And then the very top of your pyramid would be your spouse. In my case, that area is not filled, right? Because I'm not married, but you are. So therefore, the top of your pyramid has a person in it. And it's only one person, your spouse. So that's why it's at the very top.
Right.
Acquaintanceship is the largest portion of the friendship pyramid, because it's where the most amount of people you come in contact with in your life will reside.
Right.
And that's okay. You don't have to have this massive following, and not every single person that you meet has to be your best friend, or even your friend in general.
Right. I think you made a video a while ago. The title was "You Don't Have to Like Everybody," and then a couple weeks later, you made a video titled "Not Everybody Has to Like You."
Yes, that's actually one of my favorite video series that I did, and it was born out of a direct like it happened. That exact situation that I lined out there, it happened. And I was like, I like to think of myself as someone who can get along with people, but there's going to be people who don't like me, and I have to be okay with that.
Right.
So I would be on their acquaintanceship level and they're on mine, and I am totally okay with that.
Yes. I'm finding that to be true more and more nowadays. Because I was kind of raised growing up, I was like kind of a people pleaser. And
Mhm.
so I thought everyone had to like me, and then I had to like everyone. And yet we should love everyone with the love of Christ. But we don't necessarily have to, get along with everyone.
Yeah.
It's okay to have those people that's like, oh, not my vibe.
Yeah. Or even pursue something if there's not something there, like
Right.
if you don't hit it off with someone, you don't have to try to make something out of nothing.
Right.
Some friendships will just immediately evolve or immediately take off, and then through time they'll evolve into something great. But others, it's totally fine. Not every person you meet has to be your best friend. And the higher you get on the pyramid, the more narrow the areas will become, because not only do you not need a lot of people to be happy, the older you get, it's so much harder to even find people who are worthy to be on those other tiers. People worthy of filling the good friend and best friend tier
Right.
on your pyramid.
And as you grow up and you go through friendships, you figure out what you like and what you dislike, and you're able to kind of filter those people through easier.
Absolutely. Yeah. And to me, this could be controversial to some people, but like for me, my best friendship tier is 3 people. Okay. There's 3 people. There are people that I am super close to outside of my family. And my good friend tier is absolutely full of people that I would consider very, very good friends. That seems a little redundant to have a very, very good friend category. So we'll just stick with good friend. But but the misconception is that you need dozens of people at every tier to be happy. And you don't. You need fewer people, true, honest, loyal. And we're going to talk about this in a couple episodes. I can't wait for that episode because I'm already stoked. I'm looking ahead, and I can't wait for that. But true and honest, and basically the quality over the quantity is what's
Right.
important.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean that the people in the other tiers aren't true and honest. They don't have those attributes, because there are several things that can put people into those tiers that doesn't have to do with them as a person.
Yeah,
Maybe it
absolutely.
just has to do with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
in that video, and maybe we can link it in the show notes, the original friendship pyramid video, I talk about how your different seasons of life can push people in and out of tiers. It's not just, okay, I'm going to sit down and make my pyramid, and no one can leave this tier and no one can enter this tier, and that's just exactly how it has to be. No, it's way more about time and like season of life that affects
Right.
who's on your pyramid than it is who you like and who you don't like, right? And and,
Right.
and the desire to spend time with those people. So if I wanted to, and I use this term loosely, but elevate someone from my good friend tier to my best friend tier, I would have the desire to spend more time with them. And then I could build that relationship and build those memories and build that friendship structure and whatever to, again, air quotes here, elevate them to the next level. But I'm comfortable with the 3 people who are my best friend. And that doesn't mean that I
Right.
can't rely on my good friend tier. Quite the opposite. Actually, I know those people will be there with me, but it's just about time
Right.
spent together, and desire of how much time you want to be together. And just to tag in one more time about the life seasons, there's some people who will be a good friend in your early teen years, and when you become like an adult, they slip to your friend or even acquaintance level. And that's kind of
Right.
hard to recognize growing up, but I think maturing is realizing that that's okay, and sometimes that's even a good thing.
Right. Yeah. And kind of like we tagged on in the beginning, friendship is portrayed so differently in Hollywood and in media. You have this picture perfect thing, and they might get in a fight or two, but they like all of a sudden come and say sorry with this like big
Hmm.
production. And then
Yeah.
it's like, okay, yep, we're not going to talk about it anymore. We're going to sweep it under the rug.
Yeah, and then it's like
Moving on.
happily ever
Yeah.
after
Yeah.
scenario,
Right.
and nothing truly gets resolved. But I guess since the story's over at that point, it doesn't really matter. But I uh I read a book series in middle school, about this girl who moves to a super wealthy community where she's very much the outsider. Like she's from a low income, or not even a low income family. She's just purely middle class, but they're very wealthy. And their moms are friends. Like I don't remember how it works, but essentially she gets invited to this sleepover with all these girls from this community, and they're kind of like divas and they're mean to her or whatever, but they start a game of would you rather.
Oh
And
my goodness.
you're
Okay. You know those things, those childhood like tendencies that you can't part with? Like
yeah.
mine is prank calling and would you rather. I love would you rather. I make my husband play it with me
That's
and he
so
gets
funny.
so annoyed, but sometimes he caves.
Dude,
So it's
we were
fun.
at Disney World a few years ago and we were with somebody. If I called their name right now, you would know who they were. And I'll tell you off the pod, but she was coming up with the most horrendous would you rather
I
questions.
know
Like,
exactly who it is.
yeah, like this is the worst. This is the worst. And she made you answer. She made you answer like while you're standing in line for Soren or whatever. I'm like, please stop putting me in these situations. These are horrible questions that I don't want to think about if my life would turn out this way.
That
Oh,
okay, she is where I got my would you rather standards. She set the bar high. Yes.
they're horrible. That's so funny. Okay, so the girls are playing Would You Rather. Um, and the one of the questions, and this is a tough question too, not as bad as the girl who we're talking about, but it's pretty bad. The girl who's hosting the sleepover asked the question, would you rather be a friendless loser or have a ton of friends that secretly hate you? And it was such a direct question because the author, like obviously it's, completely made to be what the story demands, of course, obviously, but she the girl who moved to the community is a friendless loser, and the girls who are hosting the party are super shallow and divas and all that stuff, right? All four of the girls who are the wealthy girls said, I'd rather be a friendless loser. And the girl
Oh,
who
that's
had no
interesting.
friends said, I would rather have a ton of friends that secretly hate me. The
Oh,
reality of
I
this
thought it would be the opposite.
yeah, yeah, you'd think, right? But
Yeah.
that was the reality of this fictitious world, is that the girls' responses were the opposite of the lives they were currently living. So the four girls who had a super tight-knit friendship were constantly quarreling, ostracizing each other, and trying to make life miserable. It seemed like in the book, right? Um, but on the face of it, they were like, the clique, the divas. They had it all together. They were the friends. Um, but they thought that in this particular situation, they would rather not even have to deal with all that backbiting and quarreling and all that stuff. They'd rather not have fake relationships, even with the surface appearance of having relationships, because it was just so much. It's so draining, it's so taxing, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so basically what we learned from that story, because the moral of this story is that as long as you have a small group or even one person who is a true friend, then you have everything you need to be happy and to
Yeah.
fulfill um that certain friendship void in your life.
Yeah, that is so true. So I'm interested to hear your perspective on this. Would you say that this is true for both introverts and extroverts? Because I know introverted people, yes, they definitely want to have that one or two people and they're good. But what about extroverted people who like their nature is just they want to be around people all the time and they need
Mm,
all the friends?
that is a good question. So I would say, okay, so we first have to look at what it means to be introverted or extroverted. The official definition, and by official, I can't actually say who officially said this, but I was so corrected a few weeks ago about my definition, and it wasn't this one. So the official definition is it's how you get your recharge. So introverts get recharged by being alone. Extroverts get emotionally recharged by being out and around people. So I think that to label this sort of topic of few or many friends doesn't super fit that category. That's what I always thought it was. Is like, an outgoing person versus a quiet person. That was my
Yeah.
definition of it. But it's how they're recharged. So I think that recharging is kind of a day-to-day thing, but this concept of few versus many friends is kind of a long-term thing, like how
Okay.
you're fulfilled over time and how your emotional needs are met versus how you feel better after a day of work. Like for me, with the, traditional definition of like outgoing versus quiet, I would be considered an extrovert. But to be recharged after a day at work, I want to be at home. Like, I want to be
Interesting.
alone. I don't want to be around anybody. I need some time to myself. However, within a couple hours, I'm like, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to party. So I think it's like short-term recharge versus
Okay.
long-term emotional needs. And I could be wrong on that, but that's how I think of it for this particular myth about friendship.
Interesting. Okay. And this could probably be like a whole episode in itself.
Yeah,
But
I know.
so then would you say that there are people who have social anxiety in the name of being introverted? So they say, oh, well, I'm just introverted, but really they have social anxiety and they're not addressing it because they're introverted.
It is that is incredibly possible. We would have to talk to someone smarter than me about
Yeah.
that. But hey, viewer, get excited that we've got a ton of interviews coming up in this podcast of people who are much smarter than us who will be able to answer these questions. We should start a list. Let's start a running list of all the
Okay.
questions that come up that we can't answer ourselves
Oh, yeah.
so we can ask these smart people when we have them on. All right, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back with myth number 2. All right, welcome back, everybody. Myth number 2, friends should always agree with each other. That's the
Nope.
myth. That is the myth. Healthy friendships are built on open, honest communication. And I do fear that that phrase could become a cliche over time. So I think maybe we should
Yeah.
do a deep dive into that later on. If not this episode, then another one to talk about what that actually means. But open and honest communication includes different opinions and different perspectives.
Yeah. You're not going to meet a single person in your life that's exactly like you and will agree with you about everything. Because
Exactly.
then, I mean, what kind of feedback do you have to give each other if you're just always aligned in
Yeah,
everything?
absolutely. And it's natural to have disagreements with friends. And that we hear a lot about how married people have disagreements and how you have
Yeah.
to learn how to live with another person and that kind of thing. When you're spending time with your friends and you're investing in that relationship and you're learning about each other, even if you've known each other for decades, you're still going to learn about each other. It's natural to have disagreements, but how you handle those conflicts can determine the strength of your relationship.
Yeah.
Like the myth that friends should always agree with each other is a common misconception that can be harmful to friendships if you just think that everything should be roses and daisies and
Right.
sunflowers and marshmallow fluff all the time. If a conflict comes up, it could derail you. It's healthy to have a disagreement, or if not straight up like conflict, then to have just differing opinions, right? It makes you more well-rounded.
Right. For sure. And while it's healthy to receive feedback from your friends and be open to that, it's not healthy to be a pushover, but we should be open to new ideas and opinions that our friends have. I've definitely felt that to be true. That I was wrong on certain stances that I was taking. And because of being open and honest with my friends and kind of hearing their side about it, in some situations, I changed my opinion about certain things.
It is kind of interesting, actually, how a healthy conversation without like pointing fingers and you do this wrong or you make me feel this way or whatever can actually open our eyes about how our behavior affects other people.
Yeah.
And the myth of the of always needing to agree creates like this echo chamber effect where we're only willing to hear and accept information that confirms our beliefs, right? Like, and that can
Right.
totally limit our ability to grow and learn from others who have different experiences and different perspectives. You got to have people who challenge your assumptions or offer different viewpoints just simply to broaden your understanding of the world and become a more empathetic individual or a more caring individual. um like, you've heard the phrase, have you ever heard of people wanting their opinion to come out of your mouth?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, oh, hey, what do you think about this? Oh yeah, I think that's a great idea, and because of this. Like if you don't have someone who says, I don't know if that's the best idea, and here's why, and you shut them
Right.
off, well then guess what? You only want to hear what you think be confirmed by someone else. And I'm guilty of this. Like, I'm sure if people were honest, then they would say, yeah, I'm guilty of that too. But I know that I'll have what I think is an amazing idea. And then I'll talk to
Right.
someone, or, like my sister, and she'll be like, how is that gonna affect XYZ or whatever? And I'm like, please don't ruin this for me. I'm like, that's what I wanna tell me what I want to hear.
Yes. And I've done this for years. I like sent my sisters pictures of my outfits, like sometimes really wanting an opinion. And sometimes I think, oh, well, this is cute. I'm gonna send it to them. Like, doesn't matter what they say, I think it's cute. And sometimes I kind of want that feedback, like, oh, that's so cute. Yes.
Yeah,
My hype crew.
gas you up. Am I using that right? Kayla's much younger than me, so I'm gonna have to ask her if I'm using some slang sometimes appropriately. Like Riz. I just found out what Riz is the other day.
Oh, yeah, same.
I actually still don't know. I had to Google it, but now I forgot what it was. Okay, let's keep going. So with this myth, having disagreements with our friends can actually strengthen the relationship, because navigating conflict with friends in a safe environment actually requires us to practice active listening, compromise, give, take, that kind of thing, and empathy. And by working through disagreements in a respectful, constructive way, we build deeper trust. We build deeper respect within the friendship itself.
Yeah, for sure. And having siblings is a great way to learn and practice how well you handle conflict because they are the people that
Mm-hmm.
love you and would die for you, but they're definitely not afraid to challenge you.
Oh, they are not afraid to challenge you. That is the truest thing that we'll probably ever say on this podcast. Your siblings will hold you to a higher standard just by the very nature of, you want to be right, or they want to be right and you're going to be wrong, or you want to be right and they're going to be wrong. That's another Friendeavor video, is your first friends. I shot that one the week of your wedding, actually, the Saturday before.
Oh,
It was like, my big brother's getting married and whatever. And
in your feels.
in my feels, that's right, don't hold it against me, Brett. But I did a video called Your First Friends, and it was talking about how you develop your first relationship skills on the battlefield of siblinghood. And so as you get older, you are extremely blessed to still have that relationship with your siblings that is willing to not be the echo chamber effect, but actually challenge you and push you to be better.
Yes, absolutely. And I think with siblings, you're kind of forced to make up, like, especially if you live with them, because you're not going to go through life just cutting them off.
Right. Yeah. Like I can't cut you off because I have to get into the bathroom. Can you please move?
Right.
So, question for you, as being the youngest of four sisters, and then you have a younger brother, how has that affected you growing up? Because there's quite an age gap between
Oh,
you and
yeah.
your oldest sibling. So, like, has it seemed like overkill at sometimes, or did you always need to hear what they said, or was it like mind your
Yeah.
business? Like, what was that like for you? Because I'm the second oldest, I'm the middle child, so I don't have the widest view of that kind of thing as I think
Yeah.
you would.
So I definitely wasn't friends with my two older sisters until like recently, like within the past 5 years. So like they babysat me. So that's where our relationship was for a while. But with Carly, my sister that's 2.5 years older than me, we've definitely been best friends since we were, preteens. And I think having older siblings really taught me a lot about just being socially aware. And then I was able to share some of those things with my little brother.
Hmm.
So I would say my brother at the age that he is probably more mature than Carly and I were at his age,
He's got
just
the
because of all
benefit.
the things.
Yeah, he's
Right.
got the
Yeah.
benefit of four sisters who span a decade and a half of him before him,
Right.
to lean on that wisdom, which is,
Right.
it's such an interesting thing. Like,
Yeah.
my family, we're all 3.5 years apart. Brett's 3.5 years older than me, Kara's 3.5 years younger. And so basically what Brett experienced, Kara and I experienced too. So we're all
Yes.
learning like at the same time. More so Brett and I, because the two older siblings, just we were experiencing it first. And then as I got older and he moved out and that kind of thing, then it was Kara and I. And when we shared a room, oh God, that was awful.
That's the worst.
As soon as we moved to California, we had to share a room and it was terrible. No, it wasn't. It was actually, and I do credit that experience to be why we're as close as we are today, because we were forced to, like, baptized by fire, so to speak. But anyways, getting back to our point about agreeing, is that wisdom and that kind of thing needs to play a part in what you say and what you
Right.
do and how you respond to something that you don't agree with. So if you don't agree with what your friend is trying to tell you, say it calmly, say it
Right.
respectfully, and don't be like, you're an idiot, you're wrong, because that's going to set your friendship up for harm and to
Yes.
not be successful. It'll
And
limit your
nobody's gonna receive feedback like that. They're not gonna hear you.
yeah,
They're just gonna hear the
absolutely.
insults.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then so you're setting yourself up for failure like that, right? And so the idea that friends should always agree with each other, so if we back out to more of the bird's eye view, can create an unhealthy dynamic where people feel pressured to conform to the group's opinion and beliefs, even if it doesn't truly align with them. So
Right.
we lose authenticity, we lose vulnerability, and that can lead to damage. I would be remiss if we moved on from this subject without saying something. There are some core fundamental truths that you don't back off from. Your core values are not something that we're talking about here. We're not talking about getting swayed in what you were raised to believe and what your truth is. I'm talking about, like, just, life things.
Yeah.
Because if your friends are trying to push you in a direction that you are not meant to go, there's just a point where you have to decide, this is as far as I'm going to go. But if it's something silly like you won't eat Thai food, but your friends love Thai food, like, try it. You don't
Yeah.
know. You don't
Right.
know. So, and if you don't like it, that's fine. That should not be a stumbling block in your friendship. Is that is where you can just be like, that's one of the silly things that you don't have to agree on, but there's other things that are bigger, more impactful, that you just don't have to agree on and you can still be friends.
So keeping in mind that it's okay to be challenged, on topics like you mentioned loving Thai food and your friend's not liking it. So keeping in mind that it's okay to be challenged in that way, and maybe even some things deeper than that, what would you say is a good point to decide that certain subjects are off limits? And so, like, my friend and I, we don't talk about this because when we do, things get a little bit crazy. And well, what would you say is a good point to decide certain things are off limits without sweeping things under the rug?
Okay, so for me, I wouldn't think of it as like, okay, we can only go this far. I would actually work backwards in the sense of, these are my core values, these are my beliefs. What is the fringe elements of that? So, like, if it's your religion, right? Like, what's your core doctrine for your religion? What are the fringe rules, if you will, like the house rules, that kind of thing, on the outskirts of that? And then what's the step for your personal boundary? Okay, so I wouldn't think, okay, we can go up to this point. I would say that anything past that point is on the table. Does that make
Mm,
sense? So,
yeah.
like, inverting it so it's not like, okay, we can talk about this. Instead of, I would say, this is what's important to me. I'm not going to bend on this. And then that leaves the broader scope open to being like, okay, if a situation comes up, that's when we can deal with it in the moment. If you're a teenager and your friends want to do something that is, not Christ-like or whatever, then okay, I'm not going to do that. But if it's like, just it's just kind of icky, like, you just,
Yeah.
I don't want to go knock someone's mailbox over, right? I don't even
Yeah.
know if kids do that anymore, but then it's like, okay, you might want to do that, but I'm absolutely not going to. So just, that is the time thing, we'll agree to disagree. And if you get in trouble for it, guess what? I'm not going down with you. Even
Right.
with your best friend, like, I know, again, going back to that media portrayal of, like, two best friends sitting in a jail cell saying, like, that was awesome, like, whatever. And, like, it's the good friend that bails you
Yeah.
out of jail, and it's the friend that whatever, like, the best friend's in the cell with you. Like, no, don't be stupid under the banner of friendship, right?
Yeah.
set the boundaries for yourself on agree to disagree, that kind of thing. But when it comes to the things that matter, draw the line, make it so it's like, and it's different for everybody. It's never going to be the same boundary for everybody. But the more you evolve with your friends, the more you'll realize is that the stronger friendships that you have, the more similar your boundaries are going to be.
Okay, so moving on to myth number 3. Friends should always be available.
Ooh, this is a tough
Yeah.
one, especially for younger people.
Mm.
That is a tough one. Many
Right.
people believe that your friend should be available no matter what, right? Again, going back to media portrayal, your friend is always down to do something. Your friend is always at the other end of the phone when you need to call. Um, and it's important to understand that everyone has different priorities and responsibilities, and it's
Right.
okay to prioritize self-care or other commitments over social plans. It's important to have friends who are there for us. So I don't want to skew the perception and be like, oh yeah, well, I don't have to be there for anybody. No, you've got to be there for your friends.
Yeah.
But it's equally important to respect each other's needs and boundaries and responsibilities. It's not even so much a boundary, it's like a responsibility. And the priorities, especially for like my friends who are moms. Like I want to go out to dinner with
Right.
my friends, but they got to take care of their kids, and they'd have to bring them with them. Well, you know what? That's not going to give us the full experience of having dinner together if they have to take care of their kid. So I will have to plan, a little bit better, knowing that this friend cannot go out with me because either I have to be okay with their kid coming, or I have to give her time to find another solution, right?
Right.
So that can be a tough tightrope to walk, because you also don't want to be perceived as someone who doesn't like your friends' kids. That's not the case. I just want to talk to you and not be like, mommy.
Yes. Oh, I feel that. Yeah.
It's just, it can create a codependent dynamic where people feel obligated to, and you talked about this a little bit, and I want to give you a chance to talk about it some more, but obligated to prioritize their friends' needs over their own. So talking
Yeah.
about how like you felt the need to be liked. I would
Yeah.
assume, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I would assume
Yeah.
there were times that you set things aside that you needed to take care of,
Oh,
to
yeah.
take care of something for someone else based off of the need of like, I gotta do this or else they're not gonna like me.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think when I was little, that was definitely the case. So I'll do this or they won't like me. But then as I got older, I was still a people pleaser, but it was more like, how do you do this? Or I'm not going to feel good about myself. I'm not a giving person. I'm not kind if I don't do this. It was
Mm-hmm.
more for me. And then actually, I didn't start to really grow out of that until I started dating Brett. Oh, yeah. And, we balance each other out
Yeah.
because where he doesn't care enough what people think, I tend to care a little bit too much about what people think. So,
It's a
you know,
perfect fit.
yeah, yeah, it works.
Yeah, it's important to have those healthy boundaries. And like,
Yeah.
I think with between the two of you, you're creating the healthy boundary, because like where one of
Yes.
you care too much, one of you doesn't care at all, the coming together creates the healthy boundary to prioritize self-care, your commitment to each other, your commitment to a balanced life, and it just,
Hmm.
it avoids burnout.
Yes. Yeah. The burnout element is so true. So I went through a period of time a few years ago where I was hanging out with my friends every day. I think I was just about to turn 18. So I hadn't really fully transitioned into adulthood. I didn't have bills to pay, all that. So usually for several hours at a time, we would
That's a
hang out
rough
every single
transition
day.
to
Oh, yeah.
into the bill part of
Yeah.
adulthood.
Yeah. Especially when your friends are younger than you. So, like, where my friends were 16 and they had just gotten their license and it was like party every single night, I was transitioning to adulthood. So not only was I neglecting other responsibilities, but I neglected alone time so much that I started to kind of forget my values and interests. I was losing my individuality. Not that my friends had bad values and interests, but I was just kind of starting to conform to, whatever their values and interests were. So I started to be less introspective because I literally didn't give myself the time to introspect. So it's not a terrible thing to hang out with friends regularly. And if you have the time and flexibility for that, more power to you. But it's just important to remember to save time to
Mhm.
journal and pray so you're not losing yourself in that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. This myth of availability at all times it can create guilt and a sense of obligation when we're unable to meet our friends' needs or what we perceive to be our friends' needs. Because if we're being honest, like they might want us to be with them all the time, but that's not what they need. If you look at
Right.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs, uh, that is also shaped like a pyramid. I did not steal that from him, but that just is weird how that works out. Basically, what it says is like the needs on the higher parts of the pyramid cannot be met until the lower needs are met. So the base need is like food, shelter, water, that kind of thing. Whereas like affirmation is the next tier or something. I'd have to look it up to be totally correct about it. But what they perceive to be their need, that they need you all the time, is not as important as your need, which is a little bit lower on the pyramid of rest and food and that kind of thing.
Right.
So needs are a tricky thing when you live in a first world country and have like everything that you could actually need, like true need at your fingertips, and then it's easy to perceive things that you don't really need as you're like, oh, I gotta have this or I'm gonna die kind of thing. And with that guilt, with that obligation, it leads to a cycle of overcommitment, unrealistic expectations. That'll ultimately it'll lead to disappointment and frustration for you and for your friend or your friend group. The idea that our friends have to be at our beck and call, it creates a sense of entitlement and expectation. That's where it goes back to the first world. Like, I texted you 5 seconds ago and you didn't answer me. There was a time in
Yeah.
history where just a few short decades ago where you would call a house when someone was on vacation, leave a message for them, and you might get a phone call a couple days after they get back, right? The
Right.
immediate connectivity was never there before the
Yeah.
last 15 years or
Oh
so,
yeah.
or I guess
Even
yeah.
yeah, my parents wrote letters to each other.
Okay, see, yeah,
Sometimes didn't hear
exactly.
back for weeks.
Yeah, okay. And so when you have that entitlement and that expectation, that's not healthy.
Yeah.
You're not gonna be satisfied on either side with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this is especially true for friends with really conflicting schedules.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Working like professionals and obviously when I say all this stuff, I say it with the idea that you're not leading similar lives. So this kind of thing is mostly for the younger people who are trying to commit to doing everything all the time. Whereas when you grow up and you get more mature and you have professional lives, whatever, you'll recognize this for what it is. But for the younger listener, when you get older and you have a conflicting schedule, you're not going to be able to be with these people all the time anyways. So
Right.
make those memories, but also take care of yourself so that you can have a future with these people.
Right. You have to become so much more intentional.
Yeah. And to communicate about your availability and your needs. And you're like, listen,
Mhm.
guys, I really need to hang out. I need us to talk. I need us to reconnect. I did this to my friends a couple weeks ago. I was like, I need a sisterhood night. And you know what? We ended up spending the entire weekend together this last weekend. So
Aw, love
it was an
that.
amazing weekend. And
That's when
uh
we ran into each other
that's when we were, yes,
with both
you're
of our
so
sets of friends. Yes.
exactly. You were
That
with
was
your
my
friends.
first sleepover since before I got married. My bachelorette,
So
actually.
cute. That's so
Yeah.
cute.
Hmm.
So yeah, we actually ran into each other. And so we were both in an area or a zone of reconnectivity, right?
Yeah.
Where I had felt like even though we text every single day, we're on a group chat every single day, blowing it up. We have one on Instagram. We have one on regular texting. We used to have one on Twitter. We're not really on
All
Twitter
the
anymore.
platforms.
All the platforms, right? So even though we text every single day, it was not until I was with those people for what turned out to be essentially three straight days, with some breaks. Um, that was the need. That was what my desire was. And you know what? It just happened to work out. But if I text my friend right now, I'd be like, hey, I really need coffee. Well, we just hung out for 3 days. So that would be selfish of me to not give her time to rest because she just got home from work and I just got home from work. So do I really need coffee with her or do I need a time to chill and unwind and find myself again? Introspection, like you
Right.
said, which plug, we have a tool for that here at Friendeavor. It's called the 365 journal.
We'll link it in the show notes.
We'll link it in the show. Also, news for you. I just sent it off to be translated today. So we're getting in Spanish in the next
Oh
couple
my
months.
goodness.
I'm so stoked.
That's so exciting.
Isn't that exciting? Oh, I'm thrilled. Before we move on to number 4, and we'll be quick with that one because we'll wrap up here in the next few minutes. But I would like to encourage the listener, and if you want to jump in, Kayla, at any point, go ahead.
Mhm.
But take a deep look at this myth for yourself. If you're demanding of your friends, or if they're demanding of you, that can create a very harmful misconception, unrealistic expectations, feelings of disappointment, the guilt, the all those things that just are going to be damaging in the long run. And so it's very important to respect each other's boundaries, and understand that the priorities and the responsibilities are definitely going to be different as you get older, as the seasons of life change, and just be honest about what you want and what you need and
Yes.
what you are able to commit, or what they're able to commit to you. And again, I want to stress that it's going to change. The seasons are going to change. This might be an incredibly busy time for you right now, but the next month, the next 2 months, 6 months, whatever, you could have a window where you're with them all the time. So don't get discouraged or downcast or downtrodden when you think, oh, the glory days are gone and I'll never have this friendship like I had it again. It could be different. The season's going to change, your job might change, whatever, and you'll still have that connection that you are longing for.
Yeah. And when you're going through those seasons of being really busy and like finding it really hard to even find like 2-hour pockets of times, it's important to communicate to your friends that you want to be with them, even if it takes like 5 seconds to go on the group text, be like, I really miss you guys, because your friends that are not in a super busy season like you, they can start to feel like, well, maybe she doesn't want to make time for us.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, you know, she finds us boring now because she's married.
Yeah.
you know? So make sure your friends know that you want to be around them and then make it happen.
Yeah. I think that goes back to the term, the open communication. Like, again, I don't want this to turn into a cliche, but open and honest communication truly means being open, not just assuming that the other people in your friend group are going to understand what you need, or what
Right.
or that you are
Yeah.
expressing how you feel, because it could be being perceived differently.
They can't
So
read your mind.
yeah, they cannot read your mind. That was another Friendeavor video. Your friends are not mind readers, or something like that. It was something
Yeah.
like that. But um all going back to the point of, you got to talk about it, because you're not going to know. All right, Kayla, you ready? We're at myth number 4.
Okay.
Friends should always be similar to each other. Dun dun dun. This is a tough one. This might be the most controversial one out of all 4 of these, um because so many people take the word like diversity and fit it to a different like agenda or something like that. But when I say diversity, I don't just mean like by your skin color or by your whatever. I'm talking about like a life experience,
Yeah.
right? You do not have to have a friend that has got your same exact life experience. More often than not, the natural flow of friendship is going to put you in contact with people who live a similar life you do. But I don't think you should be scared by having a person in your life who has not lived the same life as you.
Oh yeah.
uh Different backgrounds, interests, personalities. If you don't have those integrated, then it'll limit your ability to form diverse and meaningful friendships from unlikely sources.
Yeah.
It's like diversity in age, diversity in areas of the country, that kind
Yeah.
of thing. You don't have to
Teaches
just
you
like,
a lot.
yeah, absolutely. It might seem comforting to have friends who share the exact same interests and personalities as us, but it would be beneficial to have friends who are different than us, in some way.
Right. Oh yeah, for sure. It's a really good point. I know in my close group of friends, we've always had different things in common that a couple of us were experiencing that maybe the others weren't. And it's at like different points in time. So things that we can relate to that the others can't. At one point, it was Carly and Chelsea were engaged at the same time, and Belle and I couldn't really relate to some of the conversations. It was like wedding plans and their dresses and all that. So, but right now, Bella and I are graphic designers. And so sometimes Chelsea and Carly are like completely in the dark when we're having a conversation. Like they literally can't give input. So and then sometimes Chelsea and I are going through similar things that the others aren't. So this is normal and it's healthy. Your friends should not be clones of you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I can definitely point to specific situations growing up where my friends helped shape my understanding on certain subjects. And now I'm definitely more empathetic toward those kind of situations now. And I understand things that I would not have understood if I wasn't exposed to some of my friends' situations.
It's kind of crazy how that works, honestly. Like, so going back, just to tag into what you said about those other, your three friends, my three friends, also two sets of sisters. Abby and I are both in a music ministry. Like Kara is too, but like we have like leading roles to some extent in there. So there'll be some times where our conversation at dinner will absolutely be dominated by talking about leading worship or how to integrate something or yada yada whatever. There was a season a few years ago where Lydia was in UC Davis and Kara was in UC Berkeley, and that's all they talked about, right? Was courses and professors, and Abby and I were like, drool, boring. Um, and then it's like, well, what if that drives a wedge between the friendship? Well, guess what? You've always got the fact that you're two sets of sisters to lean on, right? If I'm ever feeling like the outside person of our group of four, well, guess what? I've always got my sister who is my anchor in that group, right?
Yes.
And it doesn't really happen that often, but just the way people think,
Right.
oh, they're talking a lot about Broadway shows or whatever, and I don't have anything to tag in with that about, it's like it's just a natural thought pattern of feeling excluded, even if you're not being excluded. But having friends who are different from us can provide unique experiences and perspectives that we could, otherwise not have encountered.
Oh, yeah.
A friend from a different cultural background or different hobbies can introduce you to new things, right? New ideas, new ways of thinking, just broaden your understanding of the world and help us become more empathetic. And we've used that term a lot, but it's mostly just everything that we do goes back to the kingdom, right?
Yes.
Everything. So when we say empathetic, we're not meaning just like, oh, I understand where you came from. It's all with the goal in mind of kingdom expansion.
Yes.
So if you understand, if you get exposed to something new, that's going to help you reach someone that you otherwise may not have been able to reach.
Right.
And I remember that saying, you will be the same person that you are right now in 5 years, except for the books you read, the people you meet, and the places you go. Okay. I don't want to be the same person I am right now in 5 years. I want to be more successful. I want to be more mature, more impactful, right? But I need to read books. I need to meet new people. I need to go to new places and experience more things so that I'm not the same person who I am right now at 27 when I'm 32,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
That's the ebb and flow of life.
Mm-hmm.
So it can help us get us out of our comfort zone. Other friendships, people having friends who are not the exact same in similarity. And then of course you go, and I touched on this a few minutes ago, but you got this exclusionary dynamic where it's like us four and no more. And my friend group has been perceived as being that way because there's literally four of us. But it's like
Yeah.
that's when it goes back to the tiers, right? Like this is my best friend tier, right? And it should be very difficult to get people into that tier for you, not because you have to drag them in there, but because you should be pretty picky about who you consider your best friend, because that's the person who's going to influence you so much, right?
Right.
But if you only have people who are similar to you in your tiers, then you're not going to accept anybody else. You're only going to allow people from a certain mold into your pyramid. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I experienced that a little bit And a lot of it was like immature behavior when we were younger. But so that exclusionary behavior hasn't been a part of my adult friendships, but in my preteen and teenage friendships, I definitely experienced some of that. So we had a friend group, and it was a group of 5, but a few of the friends in this friend group were experiencing some family dynamics that my sister and I just weren't going through, and we had never experienced it. But we always tried to stay like sensitive and empathetic when the subject did come up, at sleepovers and whatnot. But we did discover that one of our friends was not comfortable talking about this subject one-on-one with us because she said there was no way we could understand. And so, like, if we're not going through it, then how can we understand and, empathize with her? But this eventually turned into this friend leaving us out of plans intentionally, or leaving us out of conversations because we didn't have that in common with them. And so she had this misconception that if we couldn't relate to this specific situation, we couldn't be good enough friends. So, I mean, bear in mind, we were all like 12 to 14. So
it's still, it starts somewhere though.
Yeah.
I mean, in the earlier you can learn these types of lessons, the more pain you'll avoid in the future. That's where Friendeavor is all, it's all about.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
How did you feel about, I mean, even at 14, that had to make you feel some type of way?
Oh yeah, it was definitely harmful. I mean, the people pleaser in me was like, oh no, like, do I not act right when she brings that up? But like, I look back on it now, I'm like, okay, I think part of it was her being 14 and insecure and probably maybe a little bit ashamed. So yeah, but at the time it was like, okay, so maybe I shouldn't have friends that are going through like super big family crisis because I'm not going to be a good enough friend to them. I don't understand, and so I'm not going to be good for them.
Yikes. That is a prime example of not knowing how to process when it's something, a friendship conflict is not resolved like that. Obviously it's going to happen at a younger age like that, but hey, let's write that down. Let's talk about that in the future, because that is definitely something that we should address, like processing the emotions of a failed friendship or a friendship of separation. Like that's really tough. Well, that wraps up our 4 friendship myths. I cannot believe we have just done our first Friendeavor the podcast episode.
So crazy.
It's so crazy. And yet here we are, and it's amazing. As we draw to a close on today's episode, I just want to remind us that these common myths about friendship, they can be harmful, right? To the relationship, to your personal well-being. And it's really, really important to challenge these misconceptions and focus, like, twist the kaleidoscope and zoom in and get to the point of your focus is building healthy and fulfilling relationships, friendships, based off of trust, communication, and just that mutual respect that you're going to find in every single relationship on the planet, whether that's marriage, friendship, boss, coworker, just humanity, right? Mutual respect is key. So that is what it means. That's the 4 common myths about friendship. So next week, tune in. We are talking about, why does trust matter in friendship?
I'm super excited for this one.
It's going to be a good one. We'll see you then. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Friendeavor the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you enjoyed today's content, leave a review and share with a friend. You can find the show notes on our website, www.friendeavor.net, and in the description of this episode.
Friendship is a journey. It's an endeavor. We'll see you next time on Friendeavor.